On today's show, the 2025-2026 season needs to be the season that Connor McMichael makes the center position his own.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the past 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the attitude of Alex Ovechkin heading into the 25-26 season. No more is he chasing down Wayne Gretzky. Mission accomplished. What is the goal for Alex Ovechkin and what could be his final season in the NHL? Surprise, surprise, a Stanley Cup. I'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about Nicklas Backstrom's return to Brynäs. But just to get it going here, we're talking about Connor McMichael and how I believe that the 25-26 season needs to be the season that he makes the center position his own. And you saw him grow by leaps and bounds this past season. It is time for him to seal down that center position, the position that he says the most comfortable playing, and just really take it to the next level. And I don't mean to be vague here. I'm talking the third line center position. Now, listen, there are other candidates in the mix there, but for me, the clear-cut favorite is Connor McMichael. He's deserving of it. And when you take a look at his stats and what he put up last year, if you remember a couple seasons ago, I said it needed to be the season for Connor McMichael. In this last season, it was. I think that we want to see him continue to grow into that because a career high last season, 26 goals, 31 assists, that's 57 points in 82 games. Now, if you go back 2 years ago, there were questions. Could he be a full-time top 6 guy? And I think there was even bigger questions than that, is that could he maintain his job in the NHL? Consistency. A little bit like Hendrix Lapierre was the bugaboo of Mr. Connor McMichael back then. But last season, he took off. And you could draw a lot of lines as to why that is, playing on a line with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I think elevated Connor McMichael's game to the next level. I think that's the biggest thing, but I think it's also the confidence of head coach Spencer Carberry, and he has that rapport with the young players. And when you take a look at him, he wasn't just racking up points. He was playing in bigger moments, heavier minutes, and more responsibility. Listen here, folks. I think we just saw the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Connor McMichael. I see his career taking it to the next level, and there's no one now standing in his way. We know that Lars Eller is off to his next mission, if you will, in Ottawa, and that third line center position is open, waiting for the taking. Now, when you take a look at it, that third line was the biggest question mark, the biggest concern all season long. We saw different players slot in there. We saw Lapierre, we saw Scarbosa, and the Capitals went outside of the organization to reach for a familiar face, Lars Eller, and all things considered, he played okay. You know, I don't want to diminish what he meant to this team, just considering what he meant before in 2018. And I understand that you can't live on former glory, but we know that that wasn't the long-term answer. And I don't think it ever was. I think the Capitals saw Lars Eller. That was a Band-Aid fix. So now they're on to the next one. Bigger picture, 30,000-foot view. let's take care of the third line generally, but more specifically, let's take on the third line center position. And like I said, he was candid about it. He is not being ambiguous. He says, I want to be center. That's where I'm most uncomfortable, unquote. And if you watched him last season, especially 5-on-5, he was one of the best puck managers, hardly forced turnovers, kept the play moving, and gave us stability in a spot that, let's be honest, was a bit of a turnstile before. That, you know, you take a look at it, that there is questions now about who is going to be that second line left wing, as, you know, if a matter of fact that Connor McMichael takes over that third line center position. Do you want an early take? I'm going to give you an early take. I think it's Andrew Crystal. It could be Ivan Mirshnyshenko. It could be Anthony Beauvillier. But if I'm going to give you a really early take on it, I think that Andrew Crystal makes the team. I think he is the second line left wing. I think that Sonny Milano is a name that's being circulated there as well. I don't think he's a part of the Capitals' long-term plans. They have Anthony Beauvillier, like I said, Ivan Mirshnyshenko, that I don't think they need to go back to that. I don't think they need to try to retread the tire on Sonny Milano. So if you take a look at a third line that could be an absolute knockout, I'm talking Beauvillier, and I'm talking Connor McMichael and Ryan Leonard. Of course, like I said, you could have Andrew Crystal playing on the third line as well, or Ivan Mirshnyshenko, right? And like I said, even in that whole mix is Sonny Milano. Again, I don't see him being a part of the team. I just think if you take a look at the other options that are available, just in Crystal, Mirshnyshenko, these kind of guys, I don't think it fits. Now, the elephant in the room, of course, being that we're talking about the third line at center position, is Hendrix Lapierre. Early take, really early take. I think he makes the team, but I don't think that he plays on a night in, night out basis. I kind of see him being an extra. And it's going to be tough, you know, like the players that I'm listed off there. How is Crystal, Miro, these kind of guys, how are they all going to fit in when it's kind of buttoned up? There's not a whole lot of holes in the roster, because if you take a look at the fourth line, you have Duhaime, Dowd, and sort of. And, you know, I know some of those are question marks. Sort of, again, is a question mark. I know that Florida was hot on him, and there was a lot of other teams around the NHL, but there's some question marks. But putting all that aside, I think that Connor McMichael is the guy to take over and solidify a troubled position at the third line center position. Now, he doesn't have to be married to that third line. You know, that can vacillate up and down a little bit. But that is, if he could solidify and give stability to that third line that was so not stable, unstable last year, I think that that would be a huge thing. Because again, to take a look at the numbers, 26 goals, 31 assists, and that's 57 points in 82 games. He checks off a lot of boxes. So again, I think that Hendrix Lapierre does make the team, but I think that he's an extra. And that's kind of a hard thing to take. And again, Sonny Milano, I don't see him making it past the camp. I think that he is off to his next mission as well. And it's not, you know, necessarily a big knock on Sonny Milano. It's just that I think that there's better, younger talent in the pipeline, that we don't need to be reliant on a guy like Sonny Milano. And if you think about a dynamic thing, if you take, you know, a third line that was one of the biggest troubled spots, the biggest, not one of the biggest troubled line in the Capitals line combos, that third line. If you could add McMichael, if you could add like a Beauvillier and a Ryan Leonard, that could be one of the worst lines and turn it into one of the better line combos for the Capitals. Wouldn't that be an about face? And like I say, putting Crystal on that second line left wing, that seems plug and play for me. I'm loving it. And I think that that's at least deserving. And I think we will get a look at that in the preseason. And I don't want to say book it because I haven't actually seen it. But, you know, when you take a look at the players, you know, all the ingredients in the pot and you're like, okay, well, where's this all going to go? That's kind of where I have it loosely sketched in. So it's going to be a fun camp, guys. And hockey, the training camp is not too far away. But if there's a player to pull for, And it's not the only player, but Connor McMichael, let's hope he can step up, rise up, and play the position that he feels the most comfortable in. And I think the position that helps the Capitals in the bigger picture. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Ovi's 21st season in the league. He's not chasing down Gretzky anymore. He's chasing down a Stanley Cup. Do the Capitals, do Ovechkin have what it takes? I'll discuss next. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job post puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in a spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. And listen, I am involved in the HR. I'm involved in the hiring, the firing, the people turning in the applications. It can give me a big headache. But if you want to take the headache, if you want to take the confusion out of it, just look to Indeed. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Capitals podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the second segment, we're talking about Ovechkin as he heads into his 21st season in the league. Can you believe it? It's like seeing a friend in high school that you haven't seen since high school, and you're like, wow, how has it been that many years? I kind of feel somewhat similar when I take a look back on Alex Ovechkin. Has it really been 21 seasons? Really? Well, as a matter of fact, Dan, yes, it has. And I think that Alex Ovechkin has a different outlook going into his 21st season in the league. It's not Gretzky. When are you going to pass him? When are you going to catch him? Is it going to be in the midseason? Is it going to be the end of the season? Gretzky. Enough. It is over. No more Gretzky. I think the bigger question is how quickly can Alex Ovechkin make it to 900 goals, right? There's not a whole long way to go there. If he just hits the ground running, we might be talking about 900. And the thing that's even more important to him than anything, this is his words, is chasing down and winning another Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals. And this is heading into what could ostensibly be his final season as a Capital in the NHL. And, we could talk about the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Maybe the Capitals should have done more. If this is actually his final lap around with the Capitals here, that maybe we should have set him up better to succeed. Now, I'm not here to say that the youth isn't going to do that, but it's a bit unproven, at least at the NHL level. So let's really take a deeper dive into the second segment here as we talk about Ovechkin and what could be his final season, his 21st season in the league here. And like I say, wow, time flies. I can't believe it. And he comes into camp this season, no longer chasing Gretzky's record. And I think that weight off his shoulders is going to let him score goals more freely. I think he was laser focused last year, but I think the chatter, and I also know that his wife mentioned it as much as well, that you don't see the struggle, the mental pressure that was put on Ovechkin all season, that he's chasing down the greatest goal scoring record of all time, that was tough on him. And last season he passed him, ended with 897, and he's going to be the first guy in the NHL to hit 900. 897 to 900. I think that could happen earlier in the season. And at that point, it's all gravy, right? I mean, he's already passed Gretzky, and he holds the position as the greatest goal scorer of all time. I think that 900 can happen pretty early in the season. Hit me up on Twitter at DanCaps218 on YouTube. Let me know your thoughts. When do you guys expect to see Alex Ovechkin hit 900? I mean, I think it could be, I don't even want to get, it could be like in the first month or so of the season. I really think that's the case. So, and last season, 44 goals in 65 games, third in the league. And don't forget, he was coming off a broken leg. Quite something. You know, when you take a look at it, of course, people talk about, you know, he would have beat that record a lot earlier had it not been for that broken leg. But then you also, you know, again, living in the rearview mirror, he would have probably even done it sooner had it not been for those lockout seasons and COVID and all that kind of stuff. That it doesn't matter how he got there. He got there. And now he says the goal is the cup, straight up, quote, play well, try to win the Stanley Cup, unquote. And, you know, when Ovi says it, you know that he believes it. And I think that he's focused. And it's not like I don't think that he wasn't focused in other seasons. I just think that, you know, like I've said, I haven't held back my feelings. I do believe that this is going to be Ovechkin's last season in the NHL, that he really wants to go out on a high note if you can. Not always the case. Just ask Tom Brady about that. Retire, unretire still, no Super Bowl when you unretire. So not always the case. But like I said, this is where it gets tricky. This is the final year of his deal, that 5-year extension he signed back in 21. It expires right at the end of next season. And there's been chatter. Is this Ovi's last ride? Ovi says he hasn't decided. Okay, but there was the email that went out to the season ticket holders. You had his wife saying on Russian media that this was going to be his final season, but he says he hasn't decided. So, okay, I am just going to hold in any deductive reasoning that I have and just live my life with the head in in the sand, like I don't know what's going on. In any event, that is kind of my thought, is that he is going to retire. And if you know Ovi, you know it's not going to announce mid-season unless he has to. Because what are some of the things that we know about Ovechkin is that he didn't like the chatter all season long. When are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? Or when are you going to retire? When are you going to catch Gretzky? All these kind of things that I don't think he's going to let anyone know until the end of the season. Maybe the last month of the season, something like that, because otherwise, every time that he plays in a city, this is my last time playing in Boston. This is my last time playing in Detroit, Minnesota, etc. I don't think that he wants that chasing him around the entire 25-26 season. I just really don't think that's the case. I think he wants to be laser focused on helping the Capitals win another cup. And then there's also the other crazy rumors. There is so much drama that's surrounding Alex Ovechkin. The ridiculous rumor from last year that the league was looking at banning Russian players. Well, to debunk that, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley said, quote, nope, never seriously considered, unquote. So yeah, Ovi was never actually in danger of being kicked out of the league. Now I'm going to remove any, political aspect of it. And that's a good thing. If that was in fact ever being kicked around, that is absolutely ridiculous. That I don't think we should hold players, based on what their country's policies are, right? So I think that was one of the good things that we found out that wasn't true, but that was, in fact, a rumor that was being circulated out there. But this year, it's going to feel different because every time Ovi skates out there, every time he scores a goal, you're thinking to yourself, how many goals is he going to score? And I know we shouldn't do this. I'm doing the thing that I said everyone shouldn't do it. So kind of against me is that when he scores a goal in this city or that city, is that the last time that he does play in Detroit or Minnesota or LA or whatever the case is? That I think that the big thing is you need to live in the moment. Kind of like when you see those concerts before cell phones were commonplace, where people, living in the moment, no cell phone scene, that I think in this, what could be Alex Ovechkin's final season, that we don't want to wrap our heads around it too much. Just take it for what it is, that enjoy it. He got 900 goals. The Capitals are in first place. The Capitals are making it to the playoffs, and just take it, incrementally. Let's not get too wrapped up in the thought process that this could be his final season. Very well could be. Again, he will not come out and formally say it because he does not want to be constantly bothered about that question. So as we take a look at what could potentially be Ovi's final season in the NHL, I'm feeling good about it. I think that he is going to surprise a lot of people. You take a look at the goals that he scored last year, just a really early take. And I'm thinking 35 goals this next season, which I understand is a step back. And I also have to say that if he far surpasses that, great. I'm just kind of giving you an early predictor of what I think 35 goals for next season. But, still 35 goals at 40 years old, that is nothing to sneeze at. So I think that this is, figuring to be a really great season for the Capitals. This is going to be a season that the Capitals, for the first time in quite a long time, are going to lead into the youth. We still got the veterans on the team, but I think this team is going to take, I hate to say a gamble, but in a certain regard, a gamble on some of the youth that's been in the system for a long time. And they're going to be led by the greatest goal scorer of all time, Alex Ovechkin. These are truly great times that we're living in. And I am looking forward to next season. And I look forward to Alex Ovechkin doing truly great things as he leads this team for what hopes to be a deep playoff push. All right, so coming up here after the break, Nick Backstrom returns to Sweden for Brynäs. And surprise, surprise, he scores a goal. Who's surprised? I'm not. I'll discuss next. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is so important. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings you the entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. And one of the things that I liked about Monarch Money, and I'm kind of, I'm not too proud of this, is I had multiple accounts out there. Like I had multiple Netflix accounts, and I forgot that I canceled that account. Monarch Money brings that all into focus, and it helps you spend your money wiser. I also realized I was spending too much money on sports memorabilia, going out to eat, and that was the bad. The good, I was saving for retirement. And the good thing I like about it as well is you can help plan your financial future together if you have a significant other in your life. That is why I love Monarch Money, and I think that you will as well. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. So in the final segment of the show today, we're talking about a Capitals favorite, number 19. Let's hear it for Nick Backstrom as he makes his return to hockey in Sweden. And what does he do? What does he do in his first game over there? He scores a goal. That's what it's all about. The vibes surrounding Nicklas Backstrom are next level. He spoke about that the emotions that surrounded this game were quite something, that he thought that his hockey days very well could have been over. So for him to go out on a high note, well, that just sends the positive vibes going, doesn't it? So let's talk about that in the final segment of the show. We know that Nick Backstrom, who was battling through that hip resurfacing procedure, well, he's back playing hockey, but he's back home with Brynäs IF in Sweden. First action, their annual black versus white scrimmage. And what does Backy do? He scores a goal. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised. And the place went absolutely crazy. They play a tribute for him before the game. And he shouldn't be too ashamed to say it. He almost cried. And he said he probably would have cried if he was not going to have to go out on the ice and play. And, for a guy that has played, 17 years in the league, in the NHL, and, in charge of some truly great highlight moments in Capitals history, for that all to be questioned, with the hip resurfacing procedure that he didn't want done, but he had to have done because he couldn't play with his kids. He couldn't tie his shoes, those kind of things, that he spent his last season as a Capital on the LTIR, no fanfare, just quietly out into the unknown, right? Into the sunset. And we thought that very well could have been the end of Nicklas Backstrom playing hockey. Not the case. So him scoring a goal in that first game over there, quite something. In his years in the league with the Capitals, 1,033 points in 1,105 games, sixth highest score Swede ever. One of the best passers we've ever seen in the NHL, period. So, his history and his legacy in the NHL is safe. People will always look back on number 19, Nick Backstrom, as one of the best to ever do it. But the thing that makes me feel good about it is that he is able to continue the next chapter of his hockey career where he's from, in Sweden. And he was able to do it with some familiar faces. Maybe you might recognize some of these names based on Capitals history: Christian Djuse, Michael Kempny, and Axel Jonsson Fjällby. That one is a bit more recent that should remember as well. It's like a little reunion overseas. So a cool moment. And I have reached out to some fans that watch and listen to the show that are over in Sweden. And if you have any videos, please send them in, DM me, and I will send you my email address. And I may have you on the Locked On Capitals podcast during next season with updates on Nicklas Backstrom, as I want to be in the know. And, your feelings and how he's playing over in Sweden, I think that will be a truly cool moment. But I'll always remember fondly, of course, the high watermark for the Capitals back in 2018, finally winning a Stanley Cup, and what a huge role that Nicklas Backstrom played in that, and everything he went through with that hip. I didn't know if we'd ever see him on skates again. And honestly, one of those comeback stories that could make you emotional, right? It sounds like the makings of a Disney movie, if you will. The one thing that I do know for certain is Nicklas Backstrom has one more chapter left. And when I say chapter, I mean over in Sweden. I was talking with some fans over in Sweden on YouTube, and they said that he actually might play a couple seasons. And wouldn't that be a great thing, to finally bookend his career where it all started, his great season in the NHL, just a really good story for Nicklas Backstrom. But how cool is that? Scoring a goal in his first game over there in that black versus white scrimmage. Just one of the things, like I say, the makings of a Disney movie, if you will. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holney, and I'll talk to you again next time.